We are about to go live, people. Any attendees on the attendee who are potentially going to speak but are on the phone, you can raise your hand and let us know so we can unmute you. Or if you're on the phone, you can do *9 to raise your hand and let us know.
Employee Council, I'm very glad you're here today. Thank you.
Go back to
Okay,
the...
Shauna, I'm going to let you take control again. Go ahead and put your agenda on the screen.
Okay.
Do you want me to take control here for you?
I was just trying
You
to
got
hide
it.
the.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Amanda, so the agenda's up and ready to go and we are live.
Okay. Good afternoon / evening to everyone. Welcome to our Employee Council meeting. In fact, our first virtual Employee Council meeting. This is Amanda Thompson, Chief Human Resources Officer, and I welcome everyone listening in and participating today. To our Employee Council members, thank you so very much for taking the time this afternoon to meet together. I know it's been a moment, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks at least since we've last met. So I hope you are all well, and I can't wait to hear your voices this evening. And we are very blessed to have our superintendent here this afternoon, along with a Board of Education member and some cabinet members to share some information and gather feedback this evening. For those listening in, we do have our agenda posted. So if you went to the district website, the Human Resources tab and the Employee Council tab, you should be able to find a link to our agenda for this evening so that you can follow along with us as well. We will go ahead and share a few thanks. So being that this is our first virtual meeting, I want to say thank you to our IT team, to Gautam Sethi, to Mike Riley, and a special thanks to Shauna Manitokan, my assistant, who learned how to do Zoom conferencing in about 2 minutes. So thank you for your hard work. Thank you for all the dedication. And thank you to everyone for your grace this evening as we are all learning how to navigate this new virtual process. Without any further pause, I would love to welcome our superintendent, Dr. Tucker, who will share a message with our members.
Thank you, Amanda, and a huge thank you for each and every member of Employee Council and our entire 8,200 plus colleagues, and of course, our 68,000 students. While we're currently facing a collective state of uncertainty and transition during this unprecedented time, we remain hopeful. And I think it's very important that we remain hopeful and we look forward to normalcy. I know normalcy is just on the horizon. We also know the tremendous emotional impact this has been on you as educators. And when I say educators, I mean each and every last one of our colleagues, regardless of your job title. This has been a traumatic impact on you, on your families, on our students and parents. But we are Douglas County School District. We will get through this. On behalf of our outstanding Board of Education and our entire school community, I appreciate your Herculean task, your Herculean efforts to keep our 68,000 students on track. And we appreciate, just simply appreciate everything that you are doing to also take care of the social, emotional aspects of educating our young people. And to our nutrition department, what a tremendous job you all do each and every day, including our colleagues who work in that department and the volunteers who helped out, including our partners from law enforcement. So thank you for not only ensuring that our kids are learning each and every day, because school is not over, as one of our directors has said, Director Chancho Shore. We may not be in the physical space to engage in teaching and learning right now, but learning has not stopped in the Douglas County School District. And it's been a lot of success, and we've had some challenges too, but we ask our parents, we ask you, our colleagues who are both teachers, support staff, and parents, we ask, as Amanda just said, to continue to give us some grace as we, like the 13,500 plus school districts across America, are we're making our way through uncharted territory. So again, we certainly ask you for grace and know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. At this time, I would like to welcome Director Meek. Director Meek is going to provide us an overview of what the finances look like at the state level, and she's going to stay on and answer some other questions, and we'll be available, obviously, to talk when we get ready for our financial budgetary presentation by Colleen and Jenna. And Director Meek is in a unique position. She's obviously is working with educators across the state in looking at budgets, and through CASB, the Colorado Association of School Boards, she's able to engage many of our lawmakers. In fact, they're often called upon her organization and other organizations to get our opinions on school financing. So without any further ado, I would like Director Susan Meek to provide us some comments.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. Thank you for the invitation to say a few words. More importantly, I truly appreciate the opportunity to just be able to listen deeply tonight to everyone's feedback and comments as we move through this time of uncertainty. On behalf of the board, I would be remiss if I did not just take a moment to acknowledge the monumental task our teachers and our staff have taken on to transition from a school-based education system to a remote one. It is simply amazing to see how our district has been able to turn on a dime and continue to serve our kids. And I also fully acknowledge that everything is not perfect. There's a reason that our families choose our schools, our classrooms, and our teachers. There is no substitute to the human connection and the relationships that fuel the learning that takes place in our classrooms. So thank you all for everything that you're doing and have done and will continue to do to maintain those vital connections. So as we deal with our local challenges, I also want to just take a moment and appreciate the global community as well. I just saw a story that 9 out of 10 students across the world are now out of school. And we're part of that global pandemic that's turned everyone's lives upside down. In Colorado, every school district's facing similar challenges, and they too are working hard to serve their kids. And we're best equipped to navigate these challenging times when we learn from each other and we share with each other. I've heard countless stories about online communities forming to help address what's working and what's not. And we're all in this together. And the more we choose to work together, the better the outcomes will be. Douglas County School District receives 2/3 of our budget from the Colorado General Fund. This is from state sales and income taxes paid by citizens in every county across Colorado. The global pandemic is causing huge financial disruptions, of which we will not be immune. It's only over the past couple of weeks that the state is starting to learn the magnitude of this problem. So for those of you who were not able to watch Tuesday evening's board meeting, it became sickeningly clear that instead of having new revenue to help us fulfill the vision that we've been working toward, advancing the competitiveness of the district employee compensation system, will likely be faced with some really difficult budget decisions. So this shock is being realized in every single district across the state, because state funding is essential for most every district in Colorado to operate. Like I said, and I think a lot of people are surprised, Douglas County receives about 2/3 of its budget from the state. So while the board's goal of quality staff being recruited, developed, supported, retained, and celebrated becomes much more challenging when we're faced with difficult budget decisions, I can say that this is still absolutely a goal. The board's fully committed to ensuring a strong, effective, viable feedback loop for our employees and entire community. Those affected by a decision should be able to affect that decision. As a member of the Board of Ed, I will be voting on difficult budget choices, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear from any group, any chamber, anyone who wants to understand what is happening with our budget and wants to weigh in on how we should proceed. As board members, we play a really important role as being a link to the community. And when we listen and we value our entire community's feedback, we'll be able to make the best decisions possible. So I just want to thank everyone for participating and being engaged in this important committee. And as Dr. Tucker indicated, I'm going to stay on the line, and I'd love to be able to help answer any questions if I can. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Director Meek, for sharing your message and your support. And as always, we appreciate the support of not only you, but our entire Board of Education in the work of Employee Council and in the work of our district. Just on to a couple of announcements to our Employee Council. So we wanted you to be aware that we're in the process as a district in planning some district level town hall meetings. We will soon get that information out to you as we put the final touches on the details, but we will be, there will be opportunities for a town hall for employees to call in and listen to various topics and engage with various district members. And then there will also be opportunity for our parents and students. So just wanted you to be aware of that so that you can be on the lookout for that information. Now would love to welcome Mr. Matt Reynolds and Dr. Deanne Kirby, who will share some updates regarding evaluation, knowing that there are some updates and changes regarding what evaluation looks like for our licensed staff who are evaluated through Cite and Lead, and also our classified professional tech admin employee groups as well. So I will turn it over to the both of you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for giving us the time to speak tonight. We've had a few changes regarding evaluation. As you all may know, Governor Polis passed an executive order on April 1st. As part of that executive order, he paused certain sections of the law regarding evaluation of licensed staff under SB 191. The most specific thing that he did pause was the frequency and duration of evaluations. In response to Governor Polis's executive order, the Douglas County School District will be pausing all evaluations for all staff, not just those included in his executive order, and to ensure that we have equity across our system. We've prepared a communication that will go out more than likely tomorrow. But we've also created a frequently asked questions document for both licensed and certified admin pro tech. And those are linked to the agenda. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kirby to talk about the frequently asked draft.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share with you. Also, thank you for your time that you spend on Employee Council. We really appreciate your input. The first FAQ that you have is the licensed frequently asked questions. And the work that we did here was to try to ask all of the questions that we believe would be burning questions that our licensed employees have, such as, do I need to complete Site 6? What about my pay? And importantly, for some of our, probably 300 of our staff members, what about my probationary status? So hopefully you've had a chance to look at this frequently asked questions document. And what we would like to know is if we have missed any questions that you believe people would ask and that we haven't answered for you. The classified FAQ follows suit and answers some similar questions.
So thank you, Matt and Deanne. It sounds like then there is time for employee council members to review those drafts and directly send their feedback to the both of you. Is that correct?
That would
Yeah.
work just fine.
Okay.
And we're treating these FAQs as documents that will evolve based on the questions that are coming and the information that we're getting from both the state and from the Colorado Department of Education. So as questions come in, we'll be adding it to this document.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And so, yes, employee council members from each of our employee groups, please be aware that we are giving you time to look at this. So, and that this will evolve over time. So again, if there is anything that you see that is not addressed that would be helpful to add to this, we ask that you send an email to Mr. Reynolds and to Dr. Kirby so that they can consider your suggestions. Thank you both. We are right on time, which is fantastic news. So next on our agenda, as Director Meek shared a moment ago, is some updated information that was shared recently at our Board of Education meeting regarding budget and compensation. So some of you, I hope, may have had a chance to listen in and watch the Board of Education meeting this past Tuesday. And know that for those who haven't, this will be new content for you and a good second review for those who have already seen this information. So I thank Ms. Doan, Colleen Doan, and Jana Schlesner, who will be sharing our entire presentation with you. And then know that after this is that important piece, members, there will be time for you to share feedback. And we will be recording this feedback so that, not recording the messages, but we will be taking this down in notes so that we can ensure as we meet with employee council and then several other committees, we will be capturing all of this in one place so that we can provide this feedback to our Board of Education. So I would love to welcome Ms. Doan and Ms. Schlesner to share of our presentation, and you'll see the presentation come up here on the screen for your reference.
Thank you, Amanda. This is Jana Sleisner. I am the Director of Finance and the co-interim CFO, along with my partner, Colleen Doan, and she is the Director of Budget. I think you have seen her face in your meetings a little bit more than you've seen mine. So thank you, Colleen, and she is my co-interim CFO during this time. So again, this is the same presentation that we were able to give to the board on Tuesday night. So we're going to go through this somewhat quickly, but know that a lot of things have changed. Director Meek set the stage very well. A lot of things have changed since this COVID-19 hit us all. Things are still changing day by day. Some things are getting more clear as we get further into this, but we still don't know how long this order is going to stand that keeps us all inside and what effect that's going to have on our economy. So we'll try to let you know where things are at and what we know and assumptions that we're making as we go through this presentation. So if you can go down to slide 2, I think I pretty much covered that agenda. We again talk about the economy, cash flow, and then give some updates on the compensation options that are out there today. So if you can go down to the 3rd slide for me. For cash flow, as Director Meek stated, part of our money comes from the state budget and part of it comes from property taxes. This is the time of year where everyone's paying their property taxes. We're getting a big influx of cash that lasts us through December. So these next 3 months are high cash collection months for us. As most of you have probably heard a lot of the county treasurers, including our own, are sending out notices that interest and penalties will be waived until at least the end of April, but we assume that will be extended even further for taxpayers. What that means is that that property tax will not flow in quite as quickly as we're used to. So we will be fine funding payroll through the remainder of the year. We're just starting to watch cash a little bit more tightly than we have in previous years due to that delay or that anticipated delay. We don't know to what extent that will be, but we are anticipating some tighter cash flow. And then what comes in with that property tax is what's called specific ownership tax. This is what you pay on your autos. That income is usually around 2 to 3 million per month. We don't know what that effect is going to be yet, but we assume people aren't out buying cars like they usually are since everyone's home. That will also affect our budget capacity and our cash flow, but to a much lesser extent. And then that also puts additional pressure on that state budget that Director Meek was referencing, because that is part of the formula that they use to come up with school finance dollars. And then finally, on the next slide, slide number 4, there is a small risk of a mid-year rescission. This is when the state pulls back funding from the school districts that we're in. And so this happened to us in 2009. There was a 2009 rescission during the recession that was about 2% of our funding, which would be dollars in today's dollars. That would happen in a fourth quarter if it did happen, and it's hard to adjust in the fourth quarter of a year. But again, this is a worst case scenario. We've told this will not happen to us, but we haven't totally taken it off the table yet. We're just letting you know that that's out there and has been done in the past. I'm going to pass the next slide on to Colleen, and she'll talk about the current year and future budget.
Thank you, Jana. So as we look at the current year, there still are a lot of unknowns because everything is changing so quickly day by day during this COVID-19 crisis. So the information that we have presented here is based upon our initial estimates of current year, so the 1920 school year budgetary impacts through the initial closure. So when we had initially closed through April 17th, these numbers will have to be reevaluated now that we'll be closed for in-person learning and just doing remote learning through the end of the school year. So we will be paying hazard pay for staff that are working on site, such as our nutrition services staff who are providing meals to students, the IT staff that gave out devices to students who didn't have a device at home, and our operations and maintenance custodial staff who are busy cleaning buildings and maintaining emergency systems. We will have to utilize reserves for our enterprises. So our enterprises are our before and after school program, our nutrition services, and our outdoor ed. They're responsible for operating their own programs with their own revenue. It's not part of that money that comes from the state that Director Meek referred to. So as we've committed to continuing to pay all regular staff through the course of the school year, they will be using their reserves during this period of time because they will not be collecting revenue. So we are estimating approximately 600,000 use of their reserves for them to be continuing to pay their regular and long-term substitute enterprise staff. We are still working through the loss of fee-based revenue, and we'll be working with all of the school bookkeepers on any refunded fees or tuition that is in the process as we speak. We are monitoring any needs for additional technology, remote learning software, and any personal protective equipment that's needed in order to address this crisis. And just to emphasize again, we'll be recalculating these numbers for our next Board of Education update on April 21st. We'll have a much more refined look at our current budget and what our forecast looks like compared to the prior situation before the impact of COVID-19. We are evaluating potential funding from the Federal CARES Act. So that is the approximately $13 billion stimulus package that includes funding for schools And we do not have that figure yet, but are actively evaluating and reviewing the data, and will provide data to the Board of Education once we know the funding we will receive and how that funding can be spent. Please scroll down to the next slide, please. So as we look forward to the next year, we have potential loss of revenue in a few different areas. So to echo what has been stated previously, we will have reduced sales and income tax from the state. That statewide, just based upon initial projections for Colorado provided last month, was between 300 million and 400 million for next year. That's a loss compared to their prior projections. As this crisis continues, that and more restaurants and places of business remain closed, and we see further impact to our economy, that loss will continue to grow. So we will not know the extent of that reduced sales and income tax until this is behind us. That does have a direct effect upon our school budgets. So our initial budget request from Governor Polis included a buy down of what we call the budget stabilization or negative factor. So this is the cut to K-12 education across the state, and a buy down means that that cut becomes smaller every year. So we initially contemplated that there would be a $52 million statewide cut to the budget stabilization factor, meaning increased per pupil revenue to the district. And what we are thinking now is that a flat budget stabilization factor is truly the best case, meaning we still have funding, we still have a budget stabilization factor, but that it's not getting any smaller. That's really best case scenario, and that best case scenario is a slim chance at this point now, to be completely honest. When we look at our expenses, we have mandatory expenses that we must cover regardless of any revenue because of either state laws that have been implemented, or where our students are in our school district, or special education caseload. So this is when we look at the loss of projected neighborhood funded pupil count means less neighborhood kids for next year compared to the current year. A loss of district share of mill levy overrides is due to the fixed dollar amount mill levy override. The share is less for neighborhood school, for the district share, and more to charter schools as the charter school enrollment grows. The employee share of the para rate, that is per state law. And then the special education, that's purely just based upon that caseload. So with that being said, without any new revenue, these mandatory expenses that we're talking about of $8.4 million, that would have to be cut from other areas within the budget. So at the minimum, we would need to find resources within our budget in order to provide support for what we have to do. Next slide, please. We are also looking at decreased interest rates within our general fund and our bond fund for this upcoming year. So we invest our cash, and with the changing market conditions, those interest rates will be lower moving forward. So this is a reduction to the general fund because we invest that cash from our TABOR reserves and some operating reserves in the past. And then our bond cash from the 2018 bond has been invested for projects associated with the bond as well. So we're still need to evaluate that full impact, and we'll receive, the finance department will receive information in the coming days about that impact, and we will evaluate whether project scope has to be reduced for the bond, or we will have to fund those projects through the general fund in order to maintain the same scope of work, which would put further stress upon the general fund. To come back to enterprises, I mentioned that they were needing to use their reserves in this crisis. By having a reduced funding within their fund balance from utilizing it this year, it means that there's increased stress upon their budgets moving forward. And so the funds that they've built up that they are using to pay their employees will be very limited in future years as they've exhausted those resources. And so we're not recommending reducing any general fund support to our enterprises right now because they've utilized all of their reserves. Next slide, please. So as we look at those general fund reserves, the impact is still to be determined on the current year because of what was mentioned on the previous slides. Our priority is to take care of our students, staff, and community using those reserves as necessary. We have committed to paying all regular employees through this closure. And we have also have technology being deployed at high levels to ensure learning and work continue for our community. So on the next slide, I just want to quickly go through how that revenue has changed with our available resources. So this was presented to the Board of Education on February 27th. It was essentially that walkthrough that I mentioned earlier on Governor Polis's recommendation on the revenue increases, those same mandatory expense increases that we've already discussed. That left with $3 million of available new revenue before any pay increases, implementation of a step and lane model, or any strategic plan related expenses. We can move to the next slide, please. After the state of Colorado came out with their March forecast, so on March 20th, we provided an update, which was that information on the flat negative factor or budget stabilization factor, meaning they weren't going to reduce that percentage cut any further. That dropped that revenue, left all the expenses the same, and that available revenue is then just $400,000 in order to fund all of those same initiatives. So that's a pretty significant reduction right there due to that change in per pupil revenue. Next slide, please. If we look at where we are today, or last week on the 1st, what we're now considering is that truly flat funding, meaning our revenue for next year is the same as our revenue for this year. So we do believe that this is probably the most realistic option at this point in time because of the state of the economy right now. Again, we are still just reviewing information. We do not know our funding yet, but this is what we're operating off of, is no new revenue. And this is what many of our other school districts in the area are doing as well. So when we consider no new revenue and we look at these expenses, there is essentially a cut needed to our budget before we can even go in and add anything new. So in order to just balance the budget, we have to make a reduction of 8.3 million. And the reason why that 8.3 changed from 8.4 was because the lost district share of mill levy override slightly adjusted because charter schools finalized their funded pupil count at the end of March. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Thompson now to speak to our various options before you all.
Hi, everyone. So team, employee council team, before we go into these next set of slides, I just wanted you to be aware that we will be asking you afterwards during the feedback session to review the pros and cons, or think about any pros and cons that you have that you want to share from your perspective on these, along with any other things you want us to think about and consider relative should any of these things be implemented. So as we head into this information, you'll have reference to this presentation in the link on the employee council slide. And you will also have an opportunity to just refer to that when you do the raise your hand process as well.
Amanda, this is Mary.
Yes.
Just letting you know, if we're going to stay on schedule, we have about 5 minutes until the feedback.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I will continue on. So we have 3 options at this time, and we're currently working through another option we'll share with you at a different time that we have shared with our Board of Education in terms of compensation and medical costs or benefit costs for next year. So this first proposal, option A, ensures that no employee's take-home pay will decrease the next school year in essence. So with that, that is inclusive of the district covering the para increase employee portion for all employee groups. That's approximately around 1.25%. And also that includes there being an increase to the medical premiums, yet that would be covered by the district. So through this ensures that there will be no take-home pay difference from now until next year. Next slide, please. In terms of how this cost is broken down by fund, you'll see the general fund and medical fund and how that money is broken down. So we'll just let you view that slide. So 0.8 of Kaiser, that's a portion of the Kaiser. Out of the general fund, a portion of the Cigna and Allegiance at 1.4 million. And also the 1.25 salary increase would come out of the general fund with the additional premium increase out of the medical fund for Cigna Allegiance. Next slide, please. So the pros and cons that are listed here include that, again, as shared earlier, no employee's pay would shift as it is this year. And then also a pro is that this would be the 8th year in a row of no medical premium increases to employees. And we are very proud that we've been able to do that for the last 7 years for our employees. In terms of cons or other things to look at, this is not inclusive of a cost of living adjustment. This is the largest amount of budget cuts to programming that would be required to be funded out of the options. And then it also requires a use of the medical fund reserves that would be reduced about 25%. And that should that be happening on an ongoing basis, that would be very difficult to sustain. Next slide, please. So option B is an 8.2 approximate implementation cost. And that is inclusive of a 1.25 para increase covering the employee portion. And then that would be inclusive of passing on to employees a $20 a month premium increase. So it's important to understand in this option that every plan would go up $20 a month across the board. And right now, some employees continue to pay more for premiums than others. It just depends on what they've chosen to elect for their plan coverage. So the range under this option would be approximately, when you look at what would be coming out of employees' paychecks for this, would be up to $20 a month, up to $50 a month. Next slide, please. So here's the cost breakdown by fund. Very similar to before. So 2.4 of that continues to come out of the medical fund. That is the self-funded plan for Cigna and Allegiance. And then out of the general fund, you'll see that it's a portion of the Kaiser increase plus the salary increase. Next slide, please. In terms of pros and cons that we have listed here, the pro would be that there is equity in terms of all employees contributing equally in terms of dollars to increase in medical premiums for a portion of that. This is a less amount that would be looking at in terms of changes to the budget. And then in terms of cons, this would mean that employees would have less take-home pay than in their current school year's paycheck. We do know that through this option, there could be impacts of medical premium increases that would be more difficult for some of our employees, depending upon what they earn. And again, this is the same in terms of no cost of living adjustment and utilizing our medical fund reserves. Next slide, please. This option is a 3.4 implementation cost. This alternative proposal would also impact employees' pay for next year, and their pay would be less in the coming school year than currently. So this would mean that employees would pay both the para employee portion and also passing along to employees a $20 a month premium increase. That does not account for the entire premium increase. That would be the increase to medical premiums overall, but this would be that portion to them. Next slide, please. As before, here is the general fund breakdown of about 1 million, and then the medical fund balance would be taken down by about 25%. Next slide, please. In terms of pros and cons, there is equity in terms of contributing equally of dollars, and then again, the least amount of budget cuts to programming, and in order to fund this. Again, the cons are similar. Employees would take home less pay. Impacts of medical premium increases may be harder, again, on employees earning different salary and hourly amounts. This would mean a net pay decrease of 1.25% approximately for our para contribution, the employee side to our employees, and other similar cons we've listed before. Next slide, please. I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to our finance team to share the remainder of our presentation, and then we'll shift to our feedback session. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. So the next few slides we'll go through fairly quickly, but these were options put together by staff of cost saving or revenue increases. They're organized into the categories based upon the area of the district that the option may affect, also whether it's a budgeted expense or a revenue, and they all require additional feedback by various stakeholder groups. They've been identified as one-time or ongoing, meaning whether it's something that will just affect the 2021 school year or it will go into effect for an extended period of time. No determinations have been made on these. These are simply options that are requested to be considered by the Board of Education for future decision making. So next slide, please. So these are options that present a minimal impact to the community. Next slide, please. These are options that have a moderate impact to the school community, so specifically just school budgetary cuts. So a bit larger impact, meaning that it affects more people, doesn't necessarily cost more money or save more money. Next slide, please. These are additional options for that moderate impact. These are the department, revenue, and other options. And you can read through all of these on the link to the agenda at your own time, since we are limited here. Next slide, please. And then finally, we have options that generate a significant impact, and those are just on schools and then other categories. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jana to wrap this up.
So just real fast to talk about reserves, just creating a little bit of perspective around what reserves are out there for both the general fund and the medical fund. I'll let you read some of the slide yourself, but we have about 87 million of fund balance, which sounds like a really big number, but only 21 to 24 million is projected to be unassigned. And you can see where those assignments are listed below. To create some perspective around this, compensation is about 86% of our expenditures. In 1 month, it's about $35 million. So that just creates some perspective of like the Board of Education reserves is 16 million, and that doesn't even cover 1 month of salaries and benefits. We're lucky that we have a little bit of capacity here to react to the COVID-19, which we have not did not foresee. I don't know if any of us did. And then just keeping the perspective of, we don't just need to make sure that we have reserves for this year. I think this is going to be an ongoing multiple year effect on us and the state and many other organizations. So we want to make sure that we use this fund balance strategically and smartly to make sure that we're not affecting more than we need to within the system. Next slide. The medical fund reserve, we do have a little bit of capacity here to use some of these reserves within the medical fund. Again, we just want to be strategic in how quickly we draw down these funds. It is a self-insured plan, which means it covers claims, admin, and up to a stop loss before insurance does kick in. And this does eliminate the profit margin that you normally pay to commercial insurers. We do have to have enough reserves kept in this fund to cover claims that are incurred but not reported, and common practice is to have 2 or 3 months in reserves. We currently have 10 million in there. A recommended contingency is 5.5 to 6 million. We'll see what this COVID-19 also does to the self-insurance fund as claims come in potentially related to COVID-19. So again, we have some options here and we've created some excess reserves, but we just want to reduce those carefully and slowly over time. I think that's all we have. So next slide.
Last slide. So Employee Council, just know that this is our tentative timeline. You've seen various versions of these due to current status and current situation regarding all that's going on right now. This is a revised timeline. So we have some upcoming additional Board of Education meetings. We have additional meetings together to work together on feedback, et cetera, and more conversation. Fiscal Oversight Committee and other committees will also have opportunity to give feedback. And then we would like to tentatively, so again, this is tentative, it's our annual sharing of employee notifications and workday, license pay information, contractual acknowledgement is around, it's before that end of the school year. That's tentative. Should anything change, we will be sure to communicate it with our superintendent board and you, and then pay for under other employee groups would be close after that. So now we'll shift to our feedback session. I know that was a lot of information. We realized that was a lot to take in and a shift from where we were when we last met. And we are grateful to you for being available this evening to reflect, to give thoughts, and to give your feedback. Similar as in other feedback sessions, we have some questions to ask of you, and this is where that hand raising piece will come in, and you'll hit *9 to share. And I will share the questions that we'll be going over. And Mary Cheslow will help us kind of keep track of time. There's around 8 minutes of time that we have per question approximately. So that we do have this being shared. So we're keeping track of your feedback so that we can ensure that our board and our superintendent get this information. Norm-wise, so first of all, know that this process is important in order to provide feedback to our dedicated Board of Education and our superintendent regarding future decisions they're going to be making, as Director Meek shared earlier. They have stated before, and I'll reiterate again, they value the voices of all the constituents in our community, and you are part of that as Employee Council and as employees in the system, and know that they'll be reviewing that information at a future meeting. So in terms of norms, again, I'd say this is very similar to what you've had before. We are not going to reach consensus, so I encourage you just to share your voice and your thoughts, and we'll record that information. And know that we are providing space for multiple viewpoints this evening. This is your perspective, and that we're going to respect those viewpoints and assume goodwill of everyone sharing. And we'll have a timekeeper to ensure that we can get to all of these questions in a timely manner. We're going to ensure that we're not sharing any personal, specific, detailed information about personal stories, knowing that this is a large open session and we want to respect that, but share your perspective from your point of view. And then we just ask that you speak for yourself and not for others. Speak from your perspective, and we will have opportunity to do this feedback session for, again, like I shared, other committees, and other processes. So we're going to continue to do this process with others. So this is for in isolation with our amazing employee council. So with that, we have a series of 4 questions, and we're going to start off with the first question. And the first question is, what are the pros of each option? You don't have to share for each individual option, you certainly can, but we want you to consider those 3 options and share what you see as any additional pros, or you may repeat any of the pros that you've seen. Again, if we welcome you to share, please make sure that you are doing the raise your hand so that Shauna can unmute you, because we very much so want to hear your voice. I see 2 hands raised in our attendees. Shauna, are you working through that to help us?
Yeah, Amanda, she is. Give her a second.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for your grace and patience.
Amanda, those people that have raised their hands, I've unmuted them. So as they go, I won't mention that, but I will just let you know that as soon as those hands get raised,
Okay.
I will unmute them.
And our panelists can see that their hand is, that they're unmuted. Is that true?
They should be able to see that the microphone is crossed out or not crossed out.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have one person that is unmuted. You go ahead and share. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the pros.
Okay, I think this is me. I think that with any of the pros, if you really want to sell it or make it as positive as possible, is to really share what won't be cut if we choose it. Because I think that cuts are what will help people kind of, really lean one way or another toward any of them.
Thank you for that. Please know there's a question upcoming for that too, but thank you very much for your voice. Our next person, I believe you're unmuted.
Hi, this is Carrie. Can you hear me?
Hey, Carrie, great to hear your voice.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank our school district for being committed to paying all regular employees through this closure. Option A seems to be the least impactful for our employees. I think that's a pro, obviously. I think a question would be, what would be the budget cuts to programming? I think it would be important to sort of hear what types of programming would need to be cut to make that happen. And so that's my feedback for now. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another hand that's raised, so that's coming very shortly. Thanks for your patience. So Peter, I believe you are unmuted and you can share your thoughts. Any pros?
Well, the pros that I'd have to share is I think it's very clear that there's been a lot of analysis done to the different types of options that are available, as well as the in anticipation of possible outcomes. I think there's a lot of work and celebration to be given there. So I think that's a huge pro. I do believe that district employees are going to recognize that. Even so, there's still going to be questions and concerns. And at this point, I think it's just a wait and see, or sending feelers out to see what questions might be out there. I met with almost every one of my staff today asking about what was shared at the board meeting. And I didn't have any negative feedback or really specific concerns. It's more of a wait and see.
Okay. Thank you very much. And for those, when you do raise your hand and speak when you're done, we're going to ask that you mute yourselves back so that we can allow someone else to speak. Thank you so much, Peter. Great to hear your voice. Any other hands raised for pros? Please hit the *9 or raise hand. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We welcome our classified, our ProTech, our licensed, our admin. We have many, many participants or attendees. I believe, Kendra, thank you. I can't wait to hear your voice. Please share your pros.
Hey, everybody. You know, again, I want to reiterate that this is best for employees. So I think that that is a huge pro that we're looking at. We say that we are looking out for the employees of Douglas County School District. Having said that, these teachers are going to be facing these families of these teachers, and the employees in the district are going to be facing a lot of the same hard times that everybody else is. And so if we can help to support them financially during the hard times to come, that would be wonderful.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. If you don't mind, would you remute again, and we'll thank you for this process. Who else might want to share? We welcome your feedback. This evening, we've heard from a few licensed, we've heard from admin. Please share. So *9 or raise hand. Amy, I think we're working on unmuting you. Can't wait to hear from you. Amy, are you able to share? I think you're ready.
Hi, I wanted to first of all really thank everyone for the communication. I feel like this process has been really transparent thus far. I know we've really switched gears so quickly, and so I really appreciate just everyone coming together. I would agree with the first person who spoke, and I apologize because I can't remember who that was, in looking at that first option, which I think seems like the best option sort of immediately, but I would really need to know what that looks like in terms of programming and where those cuts are coming from, because maybe it isn't obviously the best option.
Hi. Okay, thank you. And for those, we hear some fun conversations in the back from a 707 number. If you can mute yourself, please. Although we love the happiness in the background.
Amanda, that was our timer for our first question.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Again, right now, if you are unmuted, we ask that you mute yourself. That allows us to not hear the background and that we can focus on those that are going to speak. So our next question is, what are the cons of any of the options? What do you want us to know? So we've mentioned some in our presentation. You may either replicate that information or you may share different information. We welcome your opinion. Please use the raise hand and or *9. I see Colleen Meyer has raised her hand. We're working on unmuting you. All right, Colleen, I think you're ready to go.
Hi, Amanda, and everybody on this call. It's just great to see the incredible amount of work that's been taking place behind the scenes. It seems like we're all tucked away in our own homes working, but there's so much work going on. So I'm incredibly impressed. I guess the only con that I can see about those options, I'm concerned about the $20 flat fee when there is such a variety in salaries. And I'm wondering, could that be changed to a flat percentage based on salaries, especially when I'm thinking of certified versus classified, where we take a percentage rate that would be approximately a $20 fee for, let's say, for certified teachers and figure out what that percentage would be and then adjust it accordingly. So that's my only comment.
Thank you very much. Great to hear your voice. And we have recorded that suggestion. Thank you. What other information would you like us to hear? What other feedback, cons? We have so many great employee council members here this evening. We'd love to hear your voice. So we have 2 hands raised. I believe we have Jen. Jen, can you speak? We have 3 now. Fantastic.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, welcome.
Hi. So just a few things. I think it's really difficult to weigh, as people have said, any of these options without knowing what the cuts or the ways they would actually be funded would be. Knowing that the district has to cut around $8 million regardless of any of these plans, and knowing how they're thinking of doing that, or more importantly, knowing what the board's priorities are for that list of kind of lower impact to more significant impact. It's easy to say, well, yeah, give everybody raises and absorb the premiums until they take away X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden, if I had known that, there's no way I would have said option A would be the best. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to have the 2 conversations separately.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to hear you. Sandy is here. Thank you, Sandy. I think Shauna will work on unmuting you and go ahead and try speaking here.
I think I am unmuted.
Yes, hi.
Hi, how's everybody?
Great to hear your voice.
And yours as well. Ditto to a lot of the information that was said, even in the pros. I am very grateful to the district for continuing to receive pay. That is a big positive. I know there are many private businesses and school districts that are not able to do that. So I think that's a very big positive. I also agree, knowing the program cuts, how do we know? The other thing, which we've talked about in employee council several times, is having some type of sheet so that about benefits, so that we as employees can actually see what those benefits are. And I don't mean just pay, but if you receive Kaiser, how much the board share is. if you receive this, how much is for, your short or long-term disability, how much the district pays. That is a factor in what our total pay is. I know that doesn't help everyone, especially on more limited pay, part-time workers, but I still think that would be one positive of letting employees see what they actually make as far as pay and benefits when they're trying to consider this. Because I do know that Douglas County pays a significant higher portion, I believe, from what I've heard in our meetings, than many other districts. And again, I just appreciate you guys looking out for all of the employees. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you're referring to total compensation information. Thank you so much. We will write down that suggestion. I think we have Denise.
Yep, I'm here. Hello,
Hi, Denise. Great to hear your voice.
Great to hear yours as well. Thank you for having this. And I truly do thank you for the breakdown of the budget. The budget information was really important. I have a question. So it looks like, potentially with the first one, with the 1.25% across the board increase, I like the equity in that we're taking care of all staff, certified, classified, pro tech, et cetera. So I do like that aspect of it. I guess my question, because we've worked on this for so long, is the compensation models that we've talked about for a long time, where does that go? Because if we do the 1.25 increase, it really doesn't talk about any of the step and lane or any of the other compensation models we've discussed. So I'm just wondering, where will that work go? Or do we just revisit that starting next year when the dust settles perhaps? So, and with that, I'm wondering, how do we attract new employees if we don't have something in place?
Okay, thank you for all of that. And just typically in a feedback session, I keep quiet, but I just want to let you know, yes, the compensation, all that great work is not gone. That is saved, that is paused, as our Board of Education shared on Tuesday evening. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. Thank you. It was great to hear your voice. Derek Fleshman.
Hi, guys. So speaking from a high school lens, looking at slides 21 through 24, I worry about high school students and programs being disproportionately affected, much like it was back in the 08-09 cuts. So just wanted to pass that along from a high school perspective.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Mary Chesla, how are we doing on time?
We have about 35 seconds left.
Is there another one another person? Oh, I heard that sound. Let's see. Erin Carlson, thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear your voice.
Hi, yeah, I just was thinking along the lines that we can look at the breakdown of funds, but truly I feel like we have to look at the options for cost savings first, because we need to know what we're willing to sacrifice, because from the school level and looking at quite a few options of cutting from the site-based budget, which principals have already finalized, my worry goes to what changes will impact directly to our staffing or programming based on those options, rather than, I feel like we need to know what we're going to cut first, see how much money we have, and then we can look at what the cost breakdown by fund would be.
Thank you for your thoughts. Greatly appreciate. Nice hearing your voice too. So I hear the timer, I think, in the background. And so I'm glad that we got to hear all of the individuals whose hands were raised during this time. Here's the third question, and know that we have one more after this. The third question is, are there any unintended consequences that you want us to be aware of as a result of any of these options? Again, what are the unintended consequences from your lens that you want us to be aware of in any of these options? Don't forget to raise your hand and then mute yourself after you're done speaking. Shauna, you're doing a great job. Thank you. I see two attendees with their hands raised. We have Laura.
Thank you. I don't have any yellow, so I might be missing something here, but I think that option A with a blanket increase of 1.25 widens that gap that we've talked about for so long with, it just increases the gap of people who are making more than people who have been there longer and are making less.
Thank you very much. Jen, your hand is raised again.
Just thinking through timelines on this and knowing that the state has not even reconvened to take this conversation and school financing up again. Yet we generally try to make decisions on raises and budgets in the next month or a month and a half. Does it make any sense to make any decisions about raises before their budget is completely finalized and stamped, which might not be till June? Because knowing how school finance and the state budget works, there could be significant changes up to the last hour. And I hate for us to make a decision and then find out that what we thought was worst case scenario was not actually worst case scenario, and they came up with something worse. And now instead of $15 or $16 million of cuts to fund what option we chose, it's actually much greater than that.
Thank you. Is it Cynthia?
Oh, okay. This is Chris.
Oh, Chris, sorry.
That's okay.
I can't.
One unintended consequence might be that the effect of any of them would be that people who were on the fence about retiring might decide to retire, which in one sense would mean you could probably bring in lower cost employees, but you'd be losing a lot of knowledge out the door that maybe people weren't planning on leaving with that much knowledge going, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Other individuals, we have another hand. Deb. Welcome, Deb.
Hello. So I just wanted to jump in here, and I know that this probably is very much on everybody's mind, especially in human resources, but I worry about retaining and attracting new staff if we're not offering any kind of a raise this year. It's always a concern.
Thank you. Any other ideas? I don't see any other hands raised. Oh, Tammy, thank you. Tammy, you can go ahead and share.
There, sorry, I didn't unmute myself. I just have one concern about a lot of this, in that while it might seem really good to stay with something like option A that seems less impactful to employees right now, my concern is we need to really be aware of sustainability. And if we do get hit with some sort of a worst case scenario than what we've thought of right now, I wouldn't want to be in a position where we don't see a change this year, but then next year or following years, it starts coming to a point where maybe we have to have pay freezes or even deeper budget cuts because we've chosen something that we couldn't sustain. So, and I also agree about the internal pay gaps. Those flat percentages are the easiest now, but it does increase a lot of that internal pay gap issue.
Thank you. Let me see what other hand is raised here.
We have about a half a minute left for this question.
Okay. I think we have no more new hands raised. While we have about a half a minute to employee council, I did send you in the Q&A section the next question to be thinking about for those that need a little bit of processing time. Any other last thoughts on question 3? Okay, I hear time. Thank you, Mary. So on to question 4. So this is where you may want to refer to those various slides in terms of the budget line items to consider. So know this, we want to recognize the priorities of our constituents, knowing that there will be an impact on the budget regardless. Please provide us feedback on the concepts or values or constructs that you want to make sure that we preserve and prioritize. So think about those top 5 most important things that you want to help preserve. I'm going to share some examples with you, just some individuals that helps to hear examples. It's okay to repeat these examples within your top 5 as well, or you can come up with other ones. So this is not an exhaustive list, just some thoughts. So is it, for example, district-wide professional development, voice and choice and benefit options, class size, reasonable student fees, ample extracurricular activities for students, district credit rating. Again, these are just some initial thought processes. Competitive compensation for staff, transportation levels of service and options, first-class facilities, site level autonomy, etc. So just to kind of get your mind going, we would love to hear of your top 5. I'll read it one more time. We want to recognize the priorities of our constituents, knowing that there will be an impact on the budget regardless. Please provide us feedback on the concepts, values, constructs that you would want to make sure that we preserve and prioritize. You can share up to 5. We would love to see some hands raised. Okay, Laura, thank you.
I have a question, actually. Do we have any insider information about any other district or anywhere about anything they're doing to adapt to the whole pandemic? It's new to all of us. So budget cuts are one thing. We've dealt with that many times in the past, but the impact that this is going to have on us as a society, not just an educational institution, we don't know what that is. So has any other district or Anybody know anybody who knows anybody who's said anything to give us a lead?
So I know everyone, and I welcome any cabinet member to jump in as well. I know that every district is in the same situation right now. And they are all in process of determining their next steps too. So this is all new information, and know that across the metro area, at least with my HR colleagues, everyone is in process to determine what will happen next and what options are based on what their financial situation is. I welcome, we can definitely take, I think that was Laura that was speaking. Laura, we could take that down as a question. Any feedback regarding what those budget priorities are though? What are those values that you want us to consider? So we'll just stay within that level of question for now so that we can ensure we get your feedback. We have about 7 attendees that are wanting to speak.
I'm going to just say that for me, class size is always an issue because I think it prioritizes what's best for children. Sure, I like control for me over my benefits and what money goes where, but as far as what's best for kids, class size is good. I'm just going to leave that one right at the top.
Okay, thank you. Please mute yourself then. Chris, you're next on our list.
Okay, these aren't really in any order, but
Okay.
That we're focused on academics or vocation, but in some way to help kids excel. That we try and be the destination district we used to be. Class size for obvious reasons, and Laura just spoke to those. Compensation for staff and social emotional learning.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. So next we have Kathy Dorman. Kathy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. So I've been thinking that this is really tough, and I know a lot of you know I've been in this district a very long time, and I've been through other tough times, and I've seen how we handled it. And the one thing I say is that I'm so impressed with my colleagues and how they have stepped up to the plate and have shown initiative and have worked harder than ever and are trying to engage with kids. And this is what teachers do. I think it is time to recognize the experts in the room. And we know that the money is not there now. This is unfortunate that this is a side effect of this horrible situation. So we need to be at the table. We need to have a collective bargaining agreement so that teachers are actually sitting at that table with the district staff and coming up with priorities and coming up with solutions on how we are going to deal with this dire situation. One thing that was mentioned was how are other districts handling this? Well, other districts have collective bargaining agreements, and they do have teachers at the table. So to be that destination district, this is the simple, low-cost solution. Please let us get our collective bargaining agreement. If it's not now, when will we do it?
Thank you so much. We've recorded that information. Great to hear your voice. Carrie, you're next.
Okay, thank you. I think in terms of what's best for children, 2 things come to mind, and that is keeping the class sizes low, especially in early childhood K through 2. And in terms of educating the whole child, keeping specials as part of all students' experience, specifically art, music, and PE. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kendra.
Hi. Couple of things that I think would be important, and again, in no specific order. I think that we need to look at competitive salaries, teacher and staff retention, class sizes for sure, if we're looking at our constituents, I know that they would love to see an increase in test scores. Can't say that'd be something that I necessarily am an advocate of, but also the student well-being. I'm also wondering if right now would be a good time to go, and I know I'm going to get pushback, but to go for a meal. When we have so many parents at home with their kids right now valuing, teachers and education, even though we are going to hit some hard times, I think it would be a great time to go for a meal. And also, what about supporting Amendment 271? This is where we get some of our state funding, and supporting it would be beneficial to everybody.
Thank you for your thoughts. We've recorded those as well. Good to hear your voice. Adriana.
Hi.
Hi.
Speaking from the, not only teacher lens, but also as a parent with young children in this district, competitive salary for me still is very important and would be right there at the top, but also, it isn't just our organization that's affected financially. There are so many individual families out there who are also significantly financially impacted because of all of this. So I think we need to be really mindful about whether or not we shift costs to families in terms of, raising fees or, any of that kind of stuff. So, just being aware of the financial impact to individual families as well.
Thank you very much. Laura, we have Laura and Colleen, and so Laura is next, and then we have two more after that. I will go, oh, okay, I see Kim Herman. Kim.
Thank you. I was just going to type a comment. I'm like, for somehow I got on here as a panelist. So
sorry, thank you for your flexibility.
That's okay. No. It feels very fancy. Hello, everyone. A lot of great things being said. And Adriana, like your last comment, I think is very important. And the one thing I wanted to say before sharing some priorities is just that across the state, every single district is going to be facing budget crises, for lack of a softer word, next year and possibly the year after that. And so some of the things that we may have thought were priorities and necessities in comparison to other districts may shift now, because we're all going to be in a very different place next year. Some things I think might be priorities or values is the fact that we are a district that can come together in times of crises, like we did back in 2009 with some of the schools pulling together and making some tough decisions around budgets. And so I think trying to find ways where we all can kind of share this burden. No one asked for it, but we're all in it together. And how can we spread the wealth or lack thereof so that no one is disproportionately hit, including our community. So that's one. Trying to, wherever possible, continue the work of the board's request of honoring and valuing staff. It may just look different than we had hoped it would have. You had mentioned site autonomy earlier, Amanda, as a possibility. And I think we've lived with that model for a while. And I think it values schools like Cherry Valley and Larkspur, who are so different than, say, a Clear Sky or a high school, which has vastly different budgets and vastly different needs, student needs, community needs. And so that site autonomy, I think allows our amazing staff members to really respond directly to the needs in the building. I think another value might be, as we start making those decisions and trying to share that wealth, trying to, whenever possible, keep this away from our kids as much as possible. They're why we're here. And trying not to impact their ability to learn through any of these decisions we're unfortunately going to have to make. And then another, which isn't necessarily the highest, a personal thought, is the thing that Douglas County has offered the longest is that ability to provide options in insurance. And that is something that sets us apart. It just doesn't stand out like the salary number does when you're looking to take a job in a district. But I think we've provided that for a long time. As several of the budget presentations have mentioned, we've owned those cost increases for 7 years. But the fact that we still have an option period is pretty special. So that's just another personal plug. Thanks,
Thank you
Kay.
very much. Great to hear your voice. And we have 2 more, and then we'll end our session. So we have Colleen and Jen. Colleen, go ahead.
All right, I'm thinking of 2 priorities that I have. Number 1 is class size. And when our school surveys our community, class size is always the number 1 choice that they would support regarding the budget. And I think that's a great way to honor our community as by working on keeping our class sizes at a really manageable number. The other concern and top priority for me, and it has been for a long time, is the staff in the front office of buildings, which I realize that is probably a site-based budget for principals to determine. But when you talk about cutting budgets, and I consider that we would have fewer people, fewer eyes, fewer responsible adults in those front offices. I'm talking registrars that do 5 different tasks, not just take care of attendance and the records, but they're also partial health assistant, and then they're also partial bookkeeper or the principal secretary. I'm concerned that we don't have enough coverage in those areas for safety for our buildings, which does affect every single student and every single person in the building. And that always is a concern when we talk about budgets for me.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. We've recorded that. And our last person to share, Jen.
I think from my perspective, the priority will always be people and the people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into working for this district. So any cost-cutting measures that require laying off of people or cutting the human resources, not the department, but the literal human resources, is really letting people go at a devastating time. If we were to have to lay people off 6 months ago, you could rest easy that they would find something relatively quickly, but you lay people off now, you are releasing them into, again, a very devastating situation. So doing everything we can to not affect people.
Thank you very much. So thank you everyone for sharing your feedback, and you're the first group to provide this feedback, and we'll continue to do this process with each of our other committees and constituent groups. And know that we'll share this information with our district level leaders and also with our Board of Education. We are a little bit over on time at 6:03. However, it's so imperative that we give up to about 8 or so minutes to ensure that we are checking in on you and checking in on the system. You've seen a lot of communication regarding remote working, and we just wanted to end remote teaching, and just wanted to give you that space to be able to share of that information. I see Vera that has, I feel like I'm on Romper Room. I'm so sorry, everyone. Vera has her hand raised. Great to hear from you. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was in a meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon with a speech pathologist, and I could tell she was just ready to break down. There is such a huge discrepancy between people and the hours that they are working, people that have young children or children in school. And it's become a huge stress for everyone all around. And we've been hearing other people who don't have as much work, they've got time to paint their house, things like that. And it's become a huge struggle for those of us that have children at home and have been ill with sickness and are trying to teach 5 different classes. So I'm seeing a huge struggle out there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I'll be sure to share that. And we encourage you also to have conversations with your building leader as well, if there's any particular support that we could offer as well.
Thanks.
And we have cabinet listening in as well, in case there's any particular area where people have questions or have any feedback for us. Chris.
I just wanted to add on to, I've seen a huge impact on teachers that deal with students that have IEPs, like our learning specialists. They are online constantly trying to meet IEP goals. And I can already see it starting to wear on them. So I'm worried about them. And I myself have an 8-year-old at home. So I feel like I got 2 full-time teaching jobs all of a sudden, which I'm starting to balance, but it is difficult to have, they're both occur during the day because, an 8-year-old's got to go to bed and stuff too. So, and our kids are out, during school time. So I think just that understanding that some of us are doubling, and I just have 1 at home. I can't imagine someone who's got multiple kids trying to balance all of this. That was just it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Adriana. I'll just throw in there, since Vera mentioned speech pathologists, and I'm a speech pathologist, and I'm in preschool. I imagine the struggle is real, and I'm sure it is for preschool all the way up to our bridge program, and speech pathologists carry a huge caseload burden in special education across this district. So, I know that everybody's doing the best they can. I know that speech pathologists in particular tend to be, type A people who want to do the very best work. So I don't know if there's anything to be done about it, but it is a struggle.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So just a couple more minutes. Kathy, did you want to share a thought? I think you are next.
I do, thank you. This is really tough because I think we are seeing a lot of inequities, not only between the workloads that maybe different educators are experiencing, but also the expectations on students. And I really do think that this is due a lot to the fact that we are site-based. So we're not working towards this remote learning from a whole district point of view. We've got educational leaders that are directing people differently and have different expectations. We are a huge organization. And so I think that discrepancy is bound to happen anyway, but I'm wondering if there needs to be more parameters put around the expectations so that people aren't overworked or students aren't overworked. I really heard that last comment, and I'm also a type AAA personality, so I'm taking this so to heart that I feel like at the end of the day, I've been through the ringer. So I really do appreciate everybody's efforts, but I wonder if we need a little bit more direction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome Marlena Gross-Taylor into our conversation based on some of that information that was shared. Marlena, I think you are unmuted as a panelist. Welcome. Marlena, are you there? Oh, I don't think we can hear you. Try pushing *9. Got him? Or Shauna?
Hey, Marlena, can you do a test hello or press *6 and then say hello?
Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
There you are. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. This is great feedback. So let me just share just very quickly about the remote learning plan. And let me just, first of all, acknowledge the fact that teachers are doing, in general, painting in broad strokes, teachers are doing double duty. I have college age kids. I've never made that a secret. My kids are in college at Naval Academy and Penn State, and they are home with me doing classes online. It does not matter how old your children are, they still need you, right? They still need you in different ways. And so one of the goals of the remote learning plan is to acknowledge the fact that we need to recognize our teachers are doing double duty. They're having to instruct their kids from their schools who they love dearly, and also play the role of mom and or dad as well. So in our remote learning plan, we try to be super clear about the expectations around instruction and also around remote working, because this is new for the entire country. Everyone is having to do remote instruction, remote teaching and learning. And so we do not, and that is clearly stated in our plan, in our remote learning plan, we do not expect teachers nor students to be in front of a computer or working as they would in a normal school day, because this is not normal. We have never been through something like this before. This is not normal. And so we and I very clearly have been explicit with principals in the fact that this is not a normal school day. I do not expect teachers or staff to be engaged 7.5 hours, because we are wearing so many hats as teachers, as parents and caregivers as well in some cases. So in our remote learning plan, we are very clear that the instruction should be done and the work of our students should be done within that 4-hour window. We understand that the rigor of middle and especially high school courses may require a little bit more than that 4-hour window, but we need to hold close to that as much as possible. When we think about remote learning and digital learning, Colorado, the Department of Ed, they have very clear guidelines around that, even for schools that were created for blended learning or remote learning. And if you are doing around 4 hours or so of instruction, it takes about 2+ hours for just planning for that instruction. And that is if you're doing on-demand or live instruction. It does not matter. And because we are juggling so many hats right now as parents, as educators, as advocates for our kids, it's important that we recognize that fact from our staff. So if any staff member is feeling overwhelmed or feeling like they're having to do way more than even that, that general time limit, then they need to inform their principal. They're welcome to include me on those emails so I can continue to support our principals and help in their understanding. Because again, everyone, please hear me so clearly. This is not normal. This is not the normal way we do public education in our country. And we are in the same boat as so many other districts. However, I do feel like our plan definitely recognizes the fact and gives the flexibility and grace to our staff, to our teachers, to our educational assistants, that what you're doing is enough, and that to take care of yourself as much as we want you to take care of our kids. This is a hill I'll die on. I have no problem engaging with any naysayers or folks that disagree with this, because one thing that has been made very clear in this process is the role of teachers. Teachers have traditionally in the United States been, just looked down upon, right? Like, what are we doing? We have all the summers off. We have the best job possible. But I think because of the situation, parents in our community, they have perspective now. And I will continue to advocate for our teachers, for our staff, and for our students, that we need to have grace during this time. This is not just remote learning. This is crisis learning, as a good friend of mine said. This is crisis learning because this is not the norm. So if teachers or staff are feeling overwhelmed, they need to let their principals know, and they are welcome to copy me in any email or reach out to me or reach out to their EDOS. And I am happy to have a conversation with them and help bridge that gap as people adjust to our new normal of public education.
Thank you so much, Marlena. We appreciate that. And honoring all of you and the amazing time you've put in tonight, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our meeting. I do want to thank everyone for making this time in this new virtual environment. And like you've heard a couple of times this evening, flexibility and grace, and the importance of taking care of yourselves and being the best to take care of yourselves so you can do the amazing work that you do for all of our students and all the employees in our system. Thank you for your time this evening. Know that we will continue to gather feedback from the system, and know that we will continue to engage and have conversations as an employee council. In the meantime, if you need anything, as always, you may contact me, and I definitely appreciate your partnership. We do as a leadership group with Employee Council. And please go spend time with your loved ones and have a wonderful Friday tomorrow.